11.7 goes over solving equations by factoring x squared plus bx minus c, where your c term is negative. When you do these, you want to find your factors of that c term like you did in the section before this, but you want to keep in mind that b term. That b term sign tells you which sign or which number out of your factors has to be the bigger number with that sign. So if you look at example 1, it just tells us to factor x squared plus 13x minus 30. If we find all of the factors of negative 30, we would have negative 1 and 30, as well as positive 1 and negative 30, negative 2 and 15, positive 2 and negative 15. We also have negative 3 and 10, or positive 3 and negative 10, as well as negative 5 and 6, or positive 5 and negative 6. We want the ones that add up to be a negative 13. So that negative 2 plus, a positive 13. The negative 2 plus 15 gives us a positive 13. So we use the negative 2 and the positive 15. So this factors out to be x minus 2 times x plus 15. And again, just like any other trinomial or any expression that you're factoring, if you FOIL it out or you multiply the two sets of binomials that you have here, you will get the same trinomial that you started with before it was factored. For example 2, we have x squared minus x minus 20. So we want to find the factors of negative 20 that add up to be negative 1. So we would have 1 and negative 20, or negative 1 and positive 20, 2 and negative 10, or negative 2 and positive 10. We can also do 4 and negative 5, or negative 4 and positive 5. We want the factors that add up to be negative 1. The 4 minus 5 give us a negative 1, so we'll use the positive 4 and the negative 5 when we factor this. So it just factors to be x plus 4 times x minus 5. If we look at our next example 3, we have a squared plus 29a minus 30. So just like when we did these and that c term was positive, if we already know the factors of this negative 30 that add up to be a positive 29, we don't have to find all of the factors. So if we have a negative 1 and a positive 30, that gives us a positive 29. We can just factor it simply as a minus 1 times a plus 30. For example 4, we have x squared minus 4kx minus 12k squared. Now if you look here, that b term is negative 4kx, which means that c term, when we factor it, that k squared, both of your factors are going to have a k on it. So if we find the factors of negative 12 that add up to be a negative 4, we would have a positive 2 and a negative 6. However, this 2 is going to have a k on it, as well as the 6 is going to have a k on it. So this is going to give us x plus 2k times x minus 6k. And again, if we FOIL this out, we do x times x, that's x squared. X times negative 6k is negative 6kx. 2k times x is 2kx. And 2k times negative 6k is negative 12k squared. If we combine those like terms, we just have x squared minus 4kx minus 12k squared, which is what we had in the very beginning. So we know that that x plus 2k times x minus 6k is that trinomial factored out. For the next part of your lesson, we're just solving these. We're doing the same exact thing that we did the other day when we were working with a positive c term. First, you want to make sure your equation is equal to 0. Factor. Once you factor, set each part equal to 0 and solve for your variable. If we look at example 5, we have x squared minus 2x is equal to 15. First thing we're going to have to do here is move that 15 over, so we're going to subtract it from each side. This gives us x squared minus 2x minus 15 is equal to 0. From here, we want to find the factors of negative 15 that add up to be a negative 2. We have 3 and negative 5 that give us a negative 2. So this factors out to be x plus 3 times x minus 5 is equal to 0. From here, we want to set each part equal to 0. So we're going to have x plus 3 is equal to 0, and x minus 5 is equal to 0. We're going to move the 3 over by subtracting it from each side. So we get that x is equal to negative 3. We add the 5 to each side. We get that x is equal to 5. So our two solutions for this are negative 3 and 5. For example 6, for A, we have x squared minus x is equal to 56. For this one, we're going to move the 56 over by subtracting it from each side. This gives us x squared minus x minus 56 is equal to 0. We want the factors of negative 56 that add up to be a negative 1. So if we have a positive 7 and a negative 8, that gives us negative 1. So this factors out to be x plus 7 times x minus 8 is equal to 0. We're going to set each part equal to 0. So x plus 7 is equal to 0. X minus 8 is equal to 0. And we solve for both of them. Move your 7 over by subtracting it from each side. So we have x is equal to negative 7. We do the same thing with the 8. Add it to each side, though. And we get that x is equal to positive 8 as well. So negative 7 and 8. For example B, we have x squared plus 6x is equal to 135. We're going to move that 135 over, so we're going to subtract it from each side. This is leaving us with x squared plus 6x minus 135 is equal to 0. We want to find the factors of 135 that add up to be 6. Off the top of my head, I don't know what those are, so I'm just going to pull this negative 135 over and find the factors of it. I know it's 1 and 135. 2 does not go into it evenly. 3 goes in 45 times. 4 does not go in evenly. 5 goes in 27 times. 6 does not go into it evenly. 7 does not go into it evenly. 8 does not. 9 does not. Hold on. 9 should. 135 divided by 9 goes in 15 times. 9 and 15. There we go. All right. So if my 9 is negative and my 15 is positive, that's going to give me my 6 that I'm looking for. So this factors out to be x minus 9 times x plus 15 is equal to 0. We're going to set each of these equal to 0. So x minus 9 is equal to 0. X plus 15 is equal to 0. And we solve. So we add the 9 to each side, and we get that x is equal to 9. Subtract the 15 from each side. Oops. And we get that x is negative 15 as well. For example C, we have x squared plus x minus 132 is equal to 0. For this equation, we're already equal to 0, so we don't have to move anything over. So we're going to find the factors of negative 132 that add up to be a positive 1. Our factors of 132 that add up to be positive 1 are 11 and 12. If the 12 is positive and the 11 is negative, that gives us a positive 1. So this is x minus 11 times x plus 12 is equal to 0. We set the x minus 11 is equal to 0. The x plus 12 is equal to 0. We move the 11 over by adding it to both sides. We have that x is 11. We move the 12 over by subtracting it from both sides, and we have that x is also negative 12. And for our last example, D, we have x squared minus 14x is equal to 32. We are going to start this one by subtracting the 32 to move it over to the other side of that equal sign. We have x squared minus 14x minus 32 is equal to 0. From here, find the factors of negative 32 that add up to be negative 14. We have 2 and negative 16 that give us negative 14 when we combine them. So this factors out to be x plus 2 times x minus 16 is equal to 0. We set each of these equal to 0. So x plus 2 is equal to 0. X minus 16 is equal to 0. For the x plus 2 is equal to 0, we subtract 2 from each side and get that x is negative 2. For the x minus 16 is equal to 0, we add the 16 to both sides, and we get that x is equal to 16.